Hey everybody, and welcome to Completely Arbortrary. I am but one of your hosts. My name is Alex Crowson.
Oh, I'm the other one. I'm Casey Clapp. We made it to week 2.
We did. Wow, 2 full weeks.
This is so exciting.
Of this podcast.
For those of you who are still here with us, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming back.
First and foremost, I hope that we have at least 3 of you left by the end of next week.
I think we should have at least 3 listeners. You,
so.
me.
My mom.
There we go. There's 3.
We got it.
Easy.
It's the only thing I listen to when I drive around. It's just your sweet voice.
Oh, that's so nice. I do want to say we announced our podcast yesterday.
Yes.
And we are so happy and grateful for the fucking outpouring of people who are excited for this.
Oh my God, you guys, I can't tell you how thankful, excited, all these things. Like, it's just the outreach of support has been exciting. So Alex and I'll speak for myself. I am absolutely inspired, mostly because people want to hear so much about trees and listen to your just swooning voice, just take them wherever they want to go.
I don't know if I would use the word inspired for myself, but I would probably say I'm more nervous.
Oh.
Because I know that people are actually going to be listening to this.
There are actual listeners out there. Someone's expecting to hear your voice once a week for approximately 3 months at a time.
Yeah, that's not good for my anxiety. All right, Case. Let's talk about what tree are we going to talk about this week?
Okay, today we're going to talk about the Oregon white oak.
Ooh.
2 reasons. 1, it's easy. It's another low-hanging fruit because it's right outside. I think I saw several today.
Yeah, well, it's outside for us.
It is, yeah. Well,
and us, all the rest of you Oregonians out there.
Which actually, I knew this is actually, that was a good tangent into, not a tangent, a segue. Right into the first thing that I want to talk about with the name of this tree.
Interesting.
So last week we kind of talked a little bit about the rivalries, but at that point it was between who's got the biggest tree.
Oh, between Washington, Canada,
Oregon, yeah, exactly.
Right?
California also, we're all there. If they're native species to this sort of the West Coast area. However, there is a bone that I have to pick about this tree. So the scientific name is Quercus garryana.
I know this because I looked it up beforehand.
Oh, wait. How many of you went out and watched Alex's Your Tree, The Life of Trees?
Oh, I hope nobody.
Oh, God. Everyone, go out and find it. I'll tell you how to look it up.
No.
Follow me, DM me, and I'll tell you how to find it.
Delete it from the internet forever.
Don't you do that. That's on my resume. Yeah, but
Quercus.
Quercus garryana. Quercus is the Latin word for oak. So apparently the Romans used to call them Quercus or Quercitron. So Quercus is the oaks. That's the genus. Of course, the genus being sort of the common, the generic name, as you will, as it were. And garryana is named after a guy. It was named by David Douglas, and it was a guy named Nicholas Gary. He was the director of the Hudson's Bay Company over in Canada, Eastern Canada.
1 second.
Yeah.
David Douglas?
Yes.
Is this not the same gentleman who named the Douglas fir?
That guy's prolific. He's named just about everything. There's a Douglas squirrel, David Douglas, the high school here in town. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So he's all over the place.
This guy's been around.
He really has been. In fact, I have to remember if it was him or a different guy. But one day we'll have to do, maybe this will be a Patreon episode. We'll just talk about the history of David Douglas, the dude.
Okay.
I don't want to give it away, but I'm pretty sure he was he died in Hawaii in a really weird way. Like, when they would put leaves, like in the cartoons, you'd make a trap. You put sticks and put leaves over it, then an animal runs through and falls into that trap.
He fell into one of those?
I'm pretty sure that he fell into that. We'll have the producers look it up.
Are we going to get David Douglas canceled?
I'm hoping that we're going to get David Douglas on the show. I think he'd be a good interview, actually.
The ghost of David Douglas.
Yeah, the ghost of David Douglas.
That'd be fun. Okay, sorry. I keep pushing you off the tracks here.
So people call it, especially Canadians and Washingtonians, not to lump you two together, but you guys both call it the Gary oak.
Right.
We call it down here in the Great Pacific Northwestern state of Oregon, the Oregon white oak. Most people in the world, if you go down to California, they also say, oh yeah, that's the Oregon white oak. If you go elsewhere in the United States, I guess, or just in North America, they'll probably also call it something in between. but leaning towards Gary oak.
Interesting.
I hate that.
That's why in this episode title, it will be called the Oregon White Oak.
The Oregon White Oak, capital O.
So, Casey, let's say I'm out in the woods of Oregon, and I come across an Oregon White Oak. How do I know that it's an Oregon White Oak? What does it look like? What does it smell like? Talk about the leaves. I'm assuming. I'm not assuming. I did my research here. It has acorns.
Yes, you're right.
All right, hit us.
Okay, so every oak tree, rather, the fruit of a tree. This is kind of a. We're just gonna. We'll gloss over this for a second, but the fruit of a plant or the flowers, that's what will make it into the kind of plant that it is. So the sexual reproductive parts. Okay. That's how we classify things, especially in the plant world. So if it has all the kinds of flowers and all the kinds of fruit together, then that's going to be the same thing. So pine cones always come from pine trees, et cetera, et cetera. So acorns always come from oak trees.
Okay.
And the Oregon white oak is called specifically a white oak for two main reasons. You're walking through the woods, you see a bunch of acorns on the ground. You're like, whoa, look at that. There must be an oak tree around here somewhere. Mm-hmm. And you look up and you see leaves on this big, gigantic tree because they're usually either really scrubby trees in like the dry sort of southwest, or as you go kind of north, you get into the Great Plains, the eastern United States, and then our only oak over here are one of like three at most that are growing as trees, Oregon white oak. You start to find these really big, massive, gorgeous trees. Oak trees are known as like these majestic creatures. So you're walking through the woods, you look up, and you see all of a sudden this Oregon white oak, and it has these rounded lobed oak-like leaves. So the leaves, they're all alternately arranged, so you're never going to find them opposite, but their buds right at the tip of the twigs are always usually really clustered together. So you could think, oh, maybe those are oppositely or alternately arranged on the twig, which is just basically you see a twig on one side or you see a bud on one side. You go up the twig and then you see a bud on the opposite side. If they're right opposite each other, right at the same little spot, those would be considered oppositely arranged. Whereas alternately arranged means you have one on the left, one on the right, one on the left, one on the right, one on the left. The Oregon white oak, or white oaks or oaks in general, they're always going to be the alternate pattern, right?
Okay.
But here's what I'm getting at, is the oaks are such a big, massive group of plants that they have actually got 2 or 3 subfamilies within them. So there's the red oak or the black oak group, and then there's the white oak group. We are talking about the white oak group, so it has leaves that have rounded lobes. So every single white oak that you see will have lobes at the end of each vein as you look at the leaf, and each one will have a rounded end as opposed to a red oak that had very sharp bristle tips.
Interesting.
Yeah, so if you look up the, let's say, the northern red oak, which is Quercus rubra. Yeah, check that out. The Quercus rubra, Oregon red oak, that one has all these little points on the ends of each one of its leaves.
Oh, yes, it does.
So you're walking around. First thing, you're only going to find this tree over here on the Pacific West or the Pacific coast.
Oh, interesting.
It grows from like middle of California all the way up, and it used to go up to like Vancouver Island, and it goes inland a couple different places where it can kind of sneak over the east side of the Cascade Range, but most of the time it's going to be 100% on the west side.
If you're looking at it from a distance, does it kind of look like like a big round tree?
It does. It's perfect. It looks like a perfect globe. Like you get a big mature one, or funny enough, a big group of them, and they always have the same exact pattern when they get mature, where it's just this big, perfect, like almost like you have a biodome set on top of a bunch of stems of trees. They're gorgeous. They have really kind of their bark has kind of like squarish, I guess they'd be kind of platey, squarish, really hard.
Like plate armor, like chainmail or something.
Exactly, and really kind of fine. And they grow up, and as they get bigger and bigger, they start to develop this very rounded crown. But their limbs, their actual stems and limbs and big scaffold limbs, like every single one will be really kind of twisted and curvy. You almost never see it like a lot of the eastern oaks where they have these big arching, long, straight branches. The Oregon white oak, all their branches almost look like somewhat corkscrewy.
Interesting.
It's a divine appearance. It's just gorgeous.
It's a great sit-in tree. Good tree to sit in.
Oh, it's the best. A couple friends of mine, when we were at the U of O, I think you actually know half these people. We had a tree band where we just rode our bikes and we threw our bikes and like played music underneath a bunch of Oregon white oaks because they were so delightful.
Yeah, they're very inviting.
So here's the last bit. The leaves, they're fairly small, rounded lobes. They're simple leaves. They're not compound or fancy or anything. But their acorns, like all white oaks, will mature in one season. So in the spring, the flowers come out. In the fall, you have an acorn. The red oak or the black oak group, those ones have acorns that start spring year one flower. Over the next 2 years, those acorns will mature. So the second year, fall, those acorns will be ready to go. They'll mature, and they'll actually come out of the tree, land on the ground. I say this is important, because it really is the differentiator between, again, when we look at different kinds of trees and plants and what families are they in, are they all one kind of oak family, or are there separate individual families? Are they different species? These kinds of things. We look at the fruit. So one fruit of all, or the fruit of all one kind of those trees take 2 years. The fruit of all the other kinds of trees take only 1 year. Oh. And then they have, those split things. And there's a couple other small characteristics that kind of help you differentiate. But what's interesting about this is that these, because they have this, it's called a mast year, where all of a sudden you have every, 2 years, let's say every tree is on the same cycle. You have 2 years, every 2 years, you just get this dumping of acorns, right? And then you have all these squirrels and all these animals are running around. They're like, oh my God, there's a shit ton of acorns. I'm going to get so fat. I'm going to have 600 babies.
Yeah.
Then the next year, you only get half of as many, because all the white oaks are the only ones putting out acorns every single year. Oh. Then all of a sudden, everyone's like, whoa, I had a bunch of food last year. Where's it all at? Then you have this dive in the population of, say, squirrels. So then all these squirrels can't make it through that winter. They can't find enough acorns. They perish. The next year, you get that second flush, because now it's been a year. Oh, Alex is frowning. Oh,
I don't like the idea of a bunch of squirrels perishing.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Let's say
it's nature.
They don't perish. They become a part of the cycle again.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So the second year, sorry, I feel like if we were drinking beers right now, we'd have to like pour one out for a squirrel or something.
Yeah, poor squirrels.
Poor squirrels and these mash.
It's especially cruel because, they get a taste of that sweet acorn life on the red oak year, and then they're like rubbing their little paws together the next year, and like, here it comes. I got 30 babies to feed.
300 babies.
And then they get half as much. It's like a cruel Aesop fable.
Well, so here's where I think this actually gets really fun and really fascinating.
Okay.
So yes, cruel perhaps for the squirrel. But let's switch our perspective here and look at the tree's perspective.
Okay.
So year is one. A bunch of acorns come out, right? Yeah. All of a sudden, these squirrels are living the high life. But what are they doing? What are they eating?
I think I may know this.
Yes?
They're eating the seeds.
Yes,
right?
which are acorns. Acorns are the seeds. That's the fruit. So inside of each acorn, if you take the cap off,
right.
I'm going to act like you take the cap off and you pour the fruit out.
Yeah.
It's not how they work. They're kind of enclosed.
Oh, okay.
They're technically nuts. But if you break that nut open, there's a meaty, like a walnut, where you have a walnut and then you break it open, you have like that fleshy bit inside that you eat. Same thing with acorns. But that is also the seed. So it lands, the seed itself will pop open, and then a little cotyledon is what it's called, comes out, and it starts growing in the ground. You have a new little oak tree. So if all these squirrels eat a ridiculous amount of acorns, that those trees that last year or the last 2 years have been putting all of their efforts into to make as much and the best fruit for their new brood as they can. They're, each seed, you basically imagine it having an embryo with its lunch next to it. That's how a book described it.
Interesting.
So it's a little baby, and then you pack a lunch with it, you stick it inside an acorn, and you give it to the world. The squirrels, they'll go grab it, and squirrels will go store them everywhere. Actually, we're going to do a real quick tangent. You know what I heard about squirrels?
What?
I have yet to be able to actually 100% prove this or read it. So maybe I'll look it up, and if I find actual facts that talk about this, I'm going to post it. Squirrels do not remember where they put their hidden things. They just look where they think a squirrel would have hidden that thing. So every single squirrel is just hiding things everywhere. Then they were like, oh shit, where's my acorns? Well, if I was a squirrel, where would I hide it? I just thought that was the funniest thing. So if you want to,
that's amazing.
Yeah. So squirrels just think like squirrels. Well, that's the facts.
It makes sense though that like it doesn't matter either way, right? Like they're gonna hide it where a squirrel would hide it. So when they go to look for it, they look where a squirrel would hide it.
Yeah, it's
they
teamwork,
don't need
right?
to remember where it is.
Exactly.
Brilliant little things.
Is it it's either complete stupidity or complete brilliance?
I think it might be. They might be secret geniuses.
I think you're probably right.
I'd like to have maybe a full episode where we talk about squirrels. I love squirrels.
You do?
Yeah, I don't know much about them.
Oh my gosh, I'm so
But
sorry.
anytime I see one, I turn into a little kid. I'm like, oh my god, a squirrel! And
No
like,
way.
I love the way they hop. Remember? Okay, so yesterday or a couple days ago, Casey and I were out and about, and we saw a squirrel that jumped probably 1.5 feet in the air.
Yeah, something like that.
And didn't really go anywhere. It wasn't jumping forward. It was only jumping up.
It was like it got spooked by something. Maybe it jumped 1 foot in the air, but only like 3 inches forward.
They're just so cute.
Except the thing that was so striking is that it didn't like act afraid afterwards. It was more like wah, and then just continued on its merry way.
It just immediately forgot what scared it.
Exactly. It only gets scared by things that scare squirrels.
Right.
Of course. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, squirrels.
So,
I love squirrel talk. All right, keep going.
So from the tree's perspective, the squirrels are taking all the acorns and they're hiding them. And then they bury them in the ground.
Yeah.
If they remember, or any of the squirrels find where those acorns are, they eat that acorn. If they don't, then that acorn is basically literally planted by the squirrel.
That's a good thing.
It's a great thing, except when you, there's graphs that you can see that follow these trajectories. So you have a high mast year is what it's called. Then you get a bunch of acorns. Then the next year you get a huge boost or that same year, I guess maybe that spring, that fall, you get this big boost in squirrels because they had a lot of food. Then that next year, the following year, this is the middle between the big mast seasons. Then you have a low mast season, but a lot of squirrels. So you have lower food, a bunch of squirrels, and you get a plummet in the squirrel population. Then the next year, there's a bunch more acorns. Then the squirrels collect them all. They plant them all, but there's not as many squirrels to eat all those acorns. Mm-hmm. So now this tree is playing the long game. It's like, no. I'm going to do this, have this weird cycle. And some trees do it. Sometimes trees have really big mast years, and then sometimes they take a few years, and then they start the cycle again. So it's not quite cut and dry. Every 2 years, all the trees do this.
They might miss a season.
Yeah, for whatever reason. Maybe it was too hot, too cold, too stressed.
Interesting.
Not stressed enough. So what you end up happening, or have happen, is 1 year, big squirrel population, no acorns, no babies. All the acorns are eaten. You get no baby trees. The next year, the following year, as everything crashes and then comes back up, all of a sudden you get a bunch of acorns planted all over the place. And now you have these just massive population booms of little teeny tiny oak trees.
Wow.
So if you think about it, yes, the tree is kind of doing a bait and switch with those squirrels.
It is.
But 1 year, squirrels, great, thumbs up. Everyone's having a great time.
Yeah.
But that year, that same year, that tree's like, all my effort is completely ruined. So the next year, it switches, and the trees are like, yeah, this is a great year. I got a bunch of new little acorns growing around here. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, I got oak trees growing, not acorns. But then all of a sudden you have not as many squirrels. So you get this kind of like the graph is always one thing shoots up, then the other thing follows, then one drops, then the other drops. And so you see this rise and this fall over time of these populations, and that's just this balance. So who is controlling whom, I think, is really the question that we have to ask here.
That's really interesting. Yeah, the squirrel is sort of at the tree's whim.
Yeah. But at the same time, the tree's at the squirrel's whim, because if it just drops its acorns all the time, or it goes through, say, the gut of any other animal, then you're not going to have them be planted. Deers don't plant acorns. They eat them, digest them, and then there's nothing that comes out that can grow. They
need each other, right? Isn't that like a super common thing in nature? Like
symbiosis.
Bees and flowers.
Exactly, yeah. But it's
deer and blackberries.
Yeah. Not humans and blackberries. At least not over here. Man, they hurt. I only like blackberries one time a year, late July and August.
Are they best in late July and August?
That's when the berries are there and you can actually eat them. For those many people may not know this. If you're not listening here in the Pacific Northwest, blackberries, the Himalayan blackberry, is a voracious weed. It's all over the place. It grows like 6 feet tall, makes these gigantic thickets, but has delicious berries.
Yeah, it's worth it.
Oh, you think so?
Especially if you don't own land with blackberry bushes on them, and you can just walk by and pick them for 3 hours.
Them on the roadside. So there's one other thing, Alex, about the white oak that I think everyone should know.
Okay.
White oaks are specifically the kinds of oaks used whenever you're using something that's making a barrel, doing cooperage. So you make whiskey, you make wine, you do anything that's inside of a barrel, that is in a white oak barrel.
Interesting.
Not a red oak. The reason for that is this last thing. We were talking about it earlier. Do you remember the word?
1 second. I'm accessing my RAM.
We were, the last time, he couldn't remember it, and he said the funniest word. I don't remember what it was, but I laughed.
Oh, that word.
No, he's not going to do it.
No, I can't.
Dang. All right. Tyloses.
I was going to say it sounds like symbiosis, but it's not.
It always reminds me of like a Game of Thrones. It's like a name of some big family.
Did you say Tylosi?
Tyloses.
Tyloses Lannister.
Plural.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so the last thing that I think is really cool about white oaks is that they have what's called tight or closed tyloses. As a tree ages, it has young wood and old wood. As the young wood becomes old wood, sapwood becomes heartwood. It starts adding in all these different chemicals, and these different sort of organs grow out and kind of block up the cell. These cells that usually would transport water up and down, called vessels. So over time, to make it so those trees are, the heartwood is less susceptible to decay. White oaks fill them up with these tight tyloses, and they basically block all these vessels so no water can move up and down, which also coincidentally will stop decay from going up and down into a tree as well. And if you cut the wood down and you turn it into a whiskey barrel, it won't let any water out because it is closed. If you do the same exact thing with a black oak, any of these red oaks, black oaks, anything like that.
Yeah, it'll leak out?
It'll leak out, and you'll end up having a barrel that's like half full by the end of it because it literally just leaked out onto the floor through these microscopic vessel pores within the wood itself.
Huh.
Fascinating, isn't it?
That is super fascinating.
Yeah. So if that changes your review, I'm just saying.
I think it improves my rating, if I'm honest. That's good to know. If I'm ever making barrels, I know to look for a white oak. And I can maybe impress somebody if I ever go to a distillery. Be like, oh, I see all your barrels are white oak. And they'll be like, yeah, that's the only one you use, dumb shit.
Yeah.
All right, Case.
Okay.
Let's get to our rating. All right, I will start with my rating.
Yeah, what do you got?
Then we'll move to you. I think white oaks are phenomenal trees.
Oh, my God.
I do not use that word lightly.
No. In fact, I think this is the first time I've ever heard you say it ever.
I think it may be one of the first times I've ever said it to anyone about anything.
What?
Yeah.
All right. The Oregon white oak is phenomenal.
I think it's a phenomenal tree.
All right. Why?
I love its character. I love the story you told me about the squirrels. That's very cool. Mm-hmm. I love the symbiosis there.
Yeah.
I like that. I don't drink anymore. I don't drink alcohol anymore, but I do appreciate that you can use them to make beer and wine also. I
think so. Yeah, because you put it in there. Yeah.
Why not?
You use French oaks, which I think is really, they just call it the common oak over there.
Ooh la la.
Yeah, Quercus robur.
Quercus. Oh, that was the other thing. The other thing weighing into my decision is that I like that it's called Quercus because to me, Quercus sounds like a cartoon scientist, and I think that's funny. So my rating out of 10 golden cones of honor I forgot to introduce this whole concept.
Oh.
Let me do this now, and we'll maybe splice it in, or we might be too lazy, and it'll just happen
It'll just
now.
be in here.
We rate trees from 0 to 10 golden cones of honor based on a myriad of factors.
Several. It's a complex algorithm.
You know what? It's actually, I think it's myriad factors. Myriad is an adjective, not a noun.
I believe it's both. I looked this up one time, and someone said you can use it in both forms.
I give that grammatical fact a 10 out of 10.
That's our first 10, you guys, and it's not even a tree.
Yeah. Okay.
What do you got?
So I love this tree. I might be going, no, you know what? I'm not going to second guess myself. I'm giving this thing a 9 golden cones of honor out of 10.
9.0, an exact number. Oh my God.
I think it's fantastic. I love these trees. This is one of, I mean, it's good that we did this second episode because this is one of the very few trees I have an opinion about.
Yeah.
And I think they're awesome.
It's a high opinion, I have to say.
Yeah.
Well,
they're so friendly.
They really are.
They're inviting and friendly and round and soft and
that's true.
a little like me. All right, Case, hit us with your review.
Okay, so here is I'm as I've been going through this, I'm kind of on your same page.
Nice.
I don't necessarily, I'd have to say, I wouldn't say inviting. That's not the term I would use. I would use just glorious. Like if you are ever driving around town here in Portland and you get the opportunity to look up heritage trees, look up the Oregon white oak heritage trees. They are some of the most stunning trees in the city, bar none. I say that flat out, 100%. They have the most capacious canopy. There's one that's growing on a corner of Overton and 23rd, Northwest Portland.
This is hyper specific.
When you see this tree,
geographically,
you need to see this tree. Whoever you are, wherever you are, it has branches that go about 50 feet, like across the road, over and shade the other sidewalk.
We should go see it together.
Well, we'll take some pictures and we'll post it so everyone can see it.
Oh, great.
So having said that, they are one of the most beautiful, my top favorite oak species in the entire world. I'm saying that to everyone over there in the East Coast where there's like 30 different oak species just, in North Carolina. I think there's like 36 or 32.
Jeez.
It is, I think, maybe only second to the, a couple oaks like the canyon or the live oaks down in Georgia, with all the moss hanging on them. So that, not to mention, they are just a gem because they are so rare. Most of their habitat has been completely lost. So my rating is on sort of it's kind of like the rarity, it's like, a scarcity concept where the biggest, best ones are so unique and so amazing to where they carry the weight. They're the curve busters that pull everything up on the bell curve here. So if it was me, you gave it a 9. That's really intense. I was gonna go with 8.7. I just said 8.5, but that's not real. 8.7.
8.7.
Yeah,
a great score.
I think 8.7 and 9 that's pretty good.
Wait, 8.7 what?
Golden cones of honor.
Right.
Sorry,
okay,
I thought that was. I'm so sorry.
I just want to clarify for everybody that is the metric that we're judging these trees.
Yeah, if you want to know anything about it, please ask.
My one contribution to this podcast is
other than that, you've done nothing. That is not true, everyone.
All right, that was our review of I almost called it the Gary White Oak.
Oh my God! That was you have heard me storming out of this place right then.
That was our review of the Oregon White Oak.
The Oregon White Oak.
Well done, Oregon White Oak. We love you. Casey, let's move on to our completely arbitrary Q&A, and let's snag a question from a listener, which I was gobsmacked when we got like 8 million questions. That's an overstatement. We got like 100 and some questions. I think amazing. It might as well be 8 million. It's incredible.
It was a lot. I've spent a lot of time going through these, trying to figure out which ones are which and who wrote them. And
the cool thing about Casey's personality, he's such a sweet guy. If you sent us a question, he did read it. He didn't ignore anybody.
I try my best, and sometimes they're quick, like, yes, Other times, I think if there's some people that have followed me, I think I've sent back like almost too long where I think they're like, whoa, we don't need to know anymore. Stop talking.
Yeah.
Like 6 more paragraphs.
Well, that doesn't sound like you.
Okay, Alex, here's a question. This comes from, I believe, Rory Lee Sleeps.
Hi, Rory Lee Sleeps.
Hey, Rory or Rory Lee. We don't know if that's a compound name or not.
Sleeps.
Yeah. So here's the question. Oak trees. Why so many? Why are there so many oak trees? And the best answer that I've been able to find has been basically, it's kind of an easy answer. They are so adaptable. Number one, where there are evergreen species. They're species that grow as gigantic trees. They're trees that they're species that grow only as shrubs. They grow all the way down through Mexico, all the way up into Canada, all the way across Europe. Anywhere where there's kind of temperate, you'll find oak trees. But the other thing that makes them extremely unique and adaptable trees is not only that they can grow in almost any different condition at different elevations. Like I said, evergreen versus not evergreen, so they'll drop their leaves if they have to, they'll keep them if they have to. But they provide this acorn, and acorns are absolutely hugely nutritious and hugely important to ecosystems where they're at. Where it used to be before the Westerners came over, it was an important food source for many Native Americans, where they would have to beat the acorns down into basically a flour, and they would eat that, kind of wrap it in berries and things, and it's super nutritious. So animals, turkeys all the time love acorns. They would provide this really nice meal, high quality, and then they would get spread throughout the world. And they have been actually here in Oregon, we only have now 3 real tree species, but 500, I think it's like 580 million years ago. I think 80 million years ago, maybe, there were oak trees that were growing in a completely different habitat all throughout our state, which now that area is a desert, but there's fossilized oak trees that used to grow here. So they've been around for a long time, and they worked with animals really early on by making these insanely nutritious meals. So animals ate them and then spread them, and then they took over everywhere they possibly could, and then slowly but surely found every little niche, diversified into different species, and now you have different species that grow in almost every different location and different situation.
Wow.
From bur oaks, which are in the middle of the plains, these gigantic big oaks that just are solitary. Then you have the oak forests over in North Carolina. You go into the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, and there are just oak trees, and you can find different species of oaks at different levels, where if you're at the highest, you'll find a certain species. You go down mid-elevation, completely different species.
Interesting.
Bottomland species that grow with their feet in soil or in water, that kind of thing.
In that circumstance, do they kind of grow together also? I mean, I'm assuming there's some overlap. There's not like a hard line where, okay.
Yeah, it's like, at certain elevations, you see that change, that transition to different species. Kind of like,
great.
Here we see it with Douglas fir, and then it goes to, was that our producers? My God.
Our producer is a dog, and he gagged on something.
It's like a big yawn gag.
Sorry.
Anyway, we don't even know we got to keep that in. So, so it's like one is just better at competing because it's better at adapted at a little bit colder temperatures, maybe a little bit more snow, maybe it can take a little less water, that kind of thing. But I think the Oregon white oak is another great example of a super adaptable tree. It can grow in what used to be in the Willamette Valley. It was a wet prairie. So during this time of season, the wintertime, it's literally underwater. And then in the summertime, it's completely dry, like bone dry. And that tree, the same tree, can handle both situations. But the trick is, it can only do it if it's always been doing it. If you change it and you take it from always living in a dry spot and then add water to it, it'll get decay and die. You take it from an always wet spot and dry it out, it'll die. But it can immediately adapt to that immediate surrounding and just kick it for 300 years.
To me, this is all just more reason to love oak trees.
Yeah.
Casey,
Yeah.
I have an announcement.
What?
I, Alex Crowson, self-proclaimed tree skeptic, may have a favorite tree.
You're fucking cute.
Or type of tree. A genus?
Genus, that's it, yeah.
I may have a favorite genus of tree, and it is the oak.
This is only episode 2, and you're using scientific terms. I'm so proud.
Quercus forever, right?
Yeah, all right, that's great. Well, congratulations.
I'm getting that on a t-shirt.
We started this podcast because I had too many favorite trees and too many trees that I hated, or at least wanted to talk about its demerits.
Yeah.
And so I can't believe that now I have one convert that I can claim, which is my great friend Alex, who now you have a favorite tree, a favorite type of tree.
I have a favorite genus of tree.
My heart is full.
Merry Christmas. Thank you for the question. What was this person's name?
Rory Lee Sleeps.
Thanks, Rory Lee Sleeps. Thanks for the question. I hope Casey answered it. I'm sure he did. All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We can't wait to do this again. We will see you next week.
Goodbye.
Completely Arbortrary is produced by Alex Crowson and Casey Clapp. Our production consultant is Olivia Frankie. Our artwork is by Jillian Barthold, and our music is by the Mini Vandals. Thanks for listening.